Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In this next series, I'm taking you to all my favorite windsurf destinations and spots locally and internationally, since traveling is a little bit out of fashion these days. Make sure that you stay tuned right to the end, where I will show you guys our most secret, epic speed sailing spot on the west coast. First up in this series, I'm taking on my home spot, Langebaan, and specifically the west coast, since this area in South Africa is where all the action happens. In my previous video about Langebaan, I gave you guys a little bit of a broad overview of what it's like here, our conditions, where to rent gear, and what other activities there is to do for the rest of the family. But today, I'm going to be nailing down the exact spots on our lagoon that I love most for slalom sailing and for wave sailing. And then I will also take you a little bit up the coast to some of the most epic wave sailing spots in the world. A lot of people visit Langebaan, but they stick to the main spot where they see most of the guys go out. But they don't really know about all the other amazing spots that is not so well known in the windsurfing world. So this will give you really a deeper insight as to what options you have when you come here with all your windsurf gear. It doesn't matter what direction the wind is. There is always a perfect spot on the lagoon, as long as you know where to go, what gear to take, and how to read the forecast. Firstly, the most general, well-known, most popular spot of the whole lagoon is definitely the Cape Sports Centre Bay, where you launch from Main Beach and you're able to, depending on what direction the wind is, sail either high up below the island into Reed Bay, which really makes a very long stretch of epic slalom sailing. When the wind is east-southeast, it is ideal to sail straight up from the Cape Sports Centre Bay right into Reed Bay. You pass the second channel and enter Reed Bay. That section up there, it gets extremely flat. I wouldn't go anywhere else on the lagoon on this specific wind direction day. This is the type of days where you can really sail with your eyes closed. You will see deep into Reed Bay is a very big yellow metal buoy. So that's normally where we want to turn around. We don't really pass that section of the lagoon because it's super restricted past that point. When the wind turns south-southwest, it's really ideal to sail from the main beach all the way down into Donkergat and back. This direction is also ideal direction with regards to the chop, because you don't hit them full on, it's sort of sideways. It's a really long stretch because you're going so diagonally across the lagoon. As long as you just don't go right into Donkergat, because we have got the recce's and the army base there. They operate with submarines and bombs and helicopters, so it's not ideal to go straight to the other side. I would not recommend that. I've been chased away there by very angry people a lot of times. There are buoys on the other side where you can jibe around and you know you're going to be safe. They are not going to attack you. But I think us locals, we have irritated these guys so much by going past that barrier and point that they have almost given up on chasing us away, because I think it costs them way too much money, all that petrol to drive back and forth with a boat and chasing us away. The island that's centered in the lagoon really creates a very sheltered area behind it. So this section becomes super flat, so a big part of your run all the way to the other side is absolutely pristine, and you can really pick up massive speeds there. The two channels are what really gives the run an extra edge to it, because that is where the currents run very strong and there's massive chop that builds. If you really are into very bump and jump wave sailing type of storm sailing conditions, it's ideal to go and head up between the island and Main Beach to the upper part of that channel. That is the point where I personally think the current is at its strongest. So the biggest chop that you can experience in the lagoon, I think, is at this point. In those sections, there are a lot less kites, because all the kites mainly stick to the section more downwind below the island and Main Beach. When the wind turns west-southwest, that is the ideal day to take your gear and to head straight up all the way to the top of the lagoon. With this type of wind direction, it's very seldom that the wind will go pick up into a massive storm, so you'll be really safe on your bigger slalom gear. On days where the wind is forecasted to pick up really strong, I would not take big gear all the way up the lagoon, because I have been there. Coming back with a massive slalom board in heavy winds is something that will bring you straight back down to earth. Really look very well at the forecast and make sure it's a safe day to go up there. This is also the ideal day to take on the tandem windsurfer. Shoal and I realized that the tandem is extremely challenging to tack or jibe, so we really prefer to take it when none of the tacking and jibing is involved, because it saves a lot of effort if you can just take one tack up, maybe 2 tacks and back down again. So in the summer, it's mainly the east-southeast winds, southeast winds and west-southwest winds that blows. So for all those wind directions, if you're in the Cape Sports Centre Bay area, it is geared for all those conditions. If you are into wave sailing, the Cape Sports Centre Bay over the past few years has developed into an insane wave spot. The waves really start breaking far in the lagoon, and the angle of these waves are superb. You can really take long runs on the waves, do multiple cutbacks, and it's not a very hard, harsh breaking wave. It's a softer wave. So if you are not a pro in wave sailing yet, it is the ideal spot to learn how to wave sail. On some days, the waves get so big that it even scares the hell out of me. So this is the best of both worlds. If the winds pick up very strong, there's some waves. If you are getting tired of your massive sails, massive boards, you can just change in your gear for wave sailing, and right there in front, you will have the most epic wave sailing conditions. When the wind picks up super strong in Langebaan, as in 30 to 40 knots, and you are not in the mood to storm sail with your slalom gear, the best place to go is head straight up to Kraalbay. This part of the lagoon, which is the highest part, is like our personal Bonaire of Langebaan. The water is so much warmer that side, and there are very big shallow sections of the lagoon where it's easy for your family to learn also how to windsurf. The water is a lot flatter up that side. Kraalbay is part of the West Coast National Park, so it's really easily accessible just by driving around from Langebaan in your car with all your gear. In Kraalbay, the wind doesn't vary that much, so you will be much less likely to change gear the whole time. I think if you have basically 2 boards and 2 sails, you should be sorted for the whole day at Kraalbay. A really big bonus about this spot is that the beach always stays super sheltered. So your family will be super happy out there camping out on the beach out of the wind while you enjoy your session in peace. My favorite run to do at Kraalbay is going straight across right over to the other side of the lagoon towards a spot that we call the wreck. This is basically the longest diagonal run across the lagoon that you can experience in Langebaan. Kraalbay is also in its own really a special place because it's part of the West Coast National Park. The nature and the bird life and the scenery is absolutely breathtaking. It's best if you can time your session up there with the tides. Definitely choose an incoming tide so that you've got a much wider window gap of water available to you, because the sandbanks get exposed when it's low tide, so your runs will be shorter and you do not want to hit the sandbank at full speed during your slalom session up there. I wouldn't go up there in a northwesterly wind. My favorite times there has been with a southeast or a southwesterly wind. If you sail a little bit further up the lagoon towards Churchaven, you will find one of the best speed strips that the lagoon has to offer. We discovered this speed strip last year for the first time when sailing deep up high into the lagoon, and it's really a decent length of water running right along the beach on a very strong wind day, where the wind in Langebaan is forecasted to go high into the 30s to 40 knots. This is the place to be if you want to do some speed sailing runs. For that purpose, I would definitely launch at Kraalbay and just tack all the way up to Churchaven. Shark Bay used to be one of my favorite spots for windsurfing, but it turned into a much bigger kitesurfing space. So if you are there on a good windy day, the space is very limited because it's such an ideal place for them because the water is super shallow up on that side. And the other negative side of Shark Bay for me is that it's not really so convenient for gear rigging and carrying your gear, because you have to go very far up and down along a boardwalk with all your gear. And by the time you actually get up on the water, you are so tired of walking up and down with all your gear. Personally, for me, I would much rather go that extra mile and drive around to Kraalbay and sail on that side of the lagoon. When the wind becomes a blowout in Langebaan, your other option, if you want to do wave sailing, is to head down to the Club Mykonos resort beach. It's really a fun wave spot, and the waves are super soft and forgiving. It's not your hard, heavy, breaking waves. So also if you are a beginner or you're learning how to wave sail, this is also an ideal spot. For me personally, I've used this spot a lot during the time where I actually learned how to do wave sailing. It is a little bit more of a difficult angle with the wind. It's a very deep downwind run down the wave. So what's really a great thing to do at Mykonos is to ramp waves. So I would say it's almost a better ramp wave spot than actual wave riding spot. But with the convenience of it being so close to the Cape Sports Centre Bay, and also the amazing option of escaping a heavy stormy wind and being able to still ride waves, that is really a great spot to go to. Also, if you want to quickly come off and have a drink at the beach bar, that's definitely an added extra benefit. So now for the most epic wave spots along the west coast. We have been so spoiled in Langebaan with the amazing conditions that we have right there on our front doorstep, that some days it really does take some motivation to de-rig all the gear, pack it in and drive all the way up the west coast to the other spots. But it's definitely worth it if you are in need of a proper wave sailing experience. I myself am not your high-end level wave sailor. I definitely just do wave sailing for fun. I'm sort of at that stage where I'm just starting to take on more like your moderate, bigger sized waves. So the following 3 spots along the west coast is spots that I've already sailed at, and I can definitely say that even if you're not a pro, these spots, if you choose the right day and the right conditions, the right wave height, you will have an amazing wave sailing experience. It's not only for your high-end pros who normally come to windsurf at these spots on big days. In order to get to Swartriet, you need to go through the reception of a private farm, where there is a very, in Afrikaans we call it, kwaai tannie, there at the front desk. And you might have to pay a small fee in order to get in there. They normally have a very strict close-off time between 5 and 6, it varies. So make sure that you don't go too late if you want to have an epic wave session there. It is really a quick drive from Langebaan. Swartriet's wind is always a bit less than what it is in Langebaan, which makes it the ideal getaway for those blowout days if you want to go into full-on wave sailing. The wind really picks up to an ideal strength level at Swartriet after midday. So I would definitely not aim to go early mornings. Anytime after 1 to 2 p.m, the wind really kicks in and you will have an amazing wave sailing experience. This spot can get massive, but most of the times it's intermediate waves. It's definitely an easier spot to get out to the back line than a place like Elands Bay. The waves are a bit more forgiving. It's not your major crushing hard head-on waves that smashes you down when you try to head out to the back line, which made it for me the ideal spot for my intermediate level. And for me personally, it was a really easy spot to time my entry onto a wave, because it does take some skill to get to know which waves you should go for and at what time you should head out to take them. So this spot made that much easier for me, because you can head out so far and you can easily see how the waves are building. Once you've caught a wave, it's not really a very long one, so you don't get so many calves in. I personally can get about 2 to 3 proper calves in before I reach the beach again. So this is really a very great all-round wave spot for many different type of wind strengths and conditions. The only downside of this spot is that the water is super cold. Then next up on the list, when you drive further along the west coast, you will get Paternoster. My first experience of Paternoster was a very extremely gusty wind day because it was a southeasterly wind. When the wind blows in a southeasterly direction at Paternoster, it comes through over the inland, so it tends to be a lot more gusty than your southwesterlies. So literally I got flattened. The wind felt as though it came from literally all angles, and it made it super tricky for me. I would definitely recommend heading to Paternoster on a southwesterly day. The best place to launch is obviously on the northern side of the parking area, and for me personally, I love to stick more towards the middle of that bay. If you come closer than 20 meters to the point of where the rocks are, there are some rocks submerged at that point, so you don't really want to be coming closer than that. I think what makes Paternoster such an outstanding wave spot is because the waves are super clean due to the offshore wind that blows there. The only downside for me is that it's fast waves, so you really need to do your thing quick. You need to be able to carve very fast and be very agile with your gear, which is great training obviously if you want to go more into wave sailing. This spot is definitely known for having the best quality waves, and it is seldomly too high. So a place like Elands Bay, where it can become seriously monstrous, Paternoster is more on the safe side of wave size if you're more into the intermediate size waves. You need to be able to build a good speed in order to catch a good wave. It's really important to not take out a too small board. My waveboard is a 73 litre Severe, which is my favorite waveboard. I absolutely love that board, but it is mostly a little bit on the too small side for Paternoster, because a lot of your ideal days on wave sailing is actually more a lighter wind where you get to glide with the wave and not being pushed too much with the wind. The ideal size board for that would be a board more into the high 70s, low 80s, and a bigger size sail like a 4.7, not your 3.7 or a 4.2. The wind in Paternoster is definitely lighter than what it is in Langebaan, so it's also the ideal place to go head out when the wind in Langebaan went haywire. I made one of my biggest mistakes at Elands Bay when I tried to show Charles that I am confident to head out through the waves to get to the back of the set, because he has been trying really hard to encourage me to build enough confidence so I don't have to wait forever for sets to pass, so that I can just go over the lips of the waves if I time it correctly. And I've been trying so hard to build my confidence up for that. So on that day, something in me just said, today I need to show you that I am very capable of doing this. Elands Bay is definitely not the spot to try and look brave. So as the set came in, I got up on my gear and I thought, now I'm going to smash through all of these waves to get to the back. I'm not going to wait for this set to pass. But sometimes at Elands Bay, the wind next to the beach can be very gusty, so you might get a big lull and you will be bobbing out. So you won't have that power and speed in order to get going fast if you see the waves coming. So this is exactly what happened to me. I was bobbing out and I went over the first lip, I went over the second lip, and then I'm like, I am not going to make it. I am definitely abandoning ship immediately. So I completely abandoned my gear and that wave just hit me full on from the front. I ended up swimming for almost 20 minutes. You do not want to be swimming around at Elands Bay with your waist harness and your gear around you being thrown around by the coming waves after your wipe out. When you pack your gear for Elands Bay, it is of vital importance to take along the biggest pair of balls that you have, because on a big day, the spot is absolutely brutal and unforgiving. So you must definitely, if you're intermediate, definitely pick a small wave day for Elands Bay. Elands Bay's got its very own wind weather system. So some days there is no wind in Langebaan. You come to Elands Bay and then you wait until 4 p.m. or 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. and then suddenly that wind kicks in and that spot is on fire. There is a rocky point next to the mountain that creates the perfect left wave. This is the place to be when the wind is westerly, and in that situation It is normally a bit too onshore in Cape Town, but in Elands Bay with the southwesterly, it is a perfect cross-shore wind. The closer you go towards the side against the mountain, the more gusty it becomes. If you do go to the spot as a windsurfer, you do need to be very respectful for all the surfers that are there, because all the local guys, they mainly surf right against the rocky point. It's very important to always consider them there, because I think they are very protective over the spot, because it is such a world-class wave sailing spot. It's really an amazing long run on the wave, where everywhere it's a sandy surface. So we are very privileged to have such a world-class wave spot right here on our doorstep. My goal is to really improve my wave skills to a place where I am fully confident to take on Elands Bay on a proper day, since I've only been there on the small to medium-sized wave days. The last spot, and probably least known spot of all the windsurf spots on the west coast, is Paternoster. Charl and I discovered this place about a year ago. It is all in all a very special place to go to, because there is so much to do there, and it's almost as though the time stood still. Mother Nature is absolutely breathtakingly beautiful there. You should take your bikes, you should take your sups, and you should take your windsurf gear. Some of our favorite activities that we did was cycle all the way from Doringbaai to Strandfontein and back along the coast, supping all the way up the river as far as we possibly could. It's stunning because it's just so untouched. There's definitely not many tourists and visitors there. Paternoster itself doesn't have much accommodation options, so the best is to book a place in Doringbaai and then driving into Paternoster for the day, because it's so close to Doringbaai. Doringbaai itself is really a tiny west coast town. It's super down to earth and is a place where you can go to just zone out, block out from the world out there and just be on your own. So for us, we actually love to go there in December time, where Langebaan gets super crowded. Then we pack our stuff, all our toys, our bikes, our sups, our windsurfers, and that is where we have the most epic speed sailing on the Paternoster River. The wind doesn't really kick in until late afternoon, so you can really spend your early time of the day doing supping and cycling and exploring the area there. You definitely need a very strong wind day for that piece of speed strip to work. What's the most important factor here is you need the right wind direction. So for us, the perfect direction is a very easterly wind. The water is super flat. So on a very high wind day, you would get super high speeds. I think that is such a big part of windsurfing that I love, is that when you go to a place to windsurf, it's not only about the windsurfing itself. It's also about the amazing environment that you find yourself in. You experience nature just on a whole new level than someone who doesn't windsurf. So I think it's clear cut that when you plan to come to South Africa for windsurfing, you do need to book off a lot of weeks so that you can experience all of these spots at its best. And when you come here, you are guaranteed to always have a place to go, no matter what kind of conditions is up. You can come here as a newbie in wave sailing, from the easiest in Cape Sports Centre Bay right through to your high-end spot like Elands Bay. You are bound to develop your wave sailing skills from scratch into a proper new level, all within one area. So my personal advice is come to the West Coast and do a proper road trip where you tackle all these different spots. Let me know what you think, what your experiences were, or if you have been there, let me know how it was for you and which ones were your personal favorites. So now that I've covered my favorite local spots, in my next video, I will be taking you guys abroad to my favorite international spots. Remember to subscribe to my channel to stay tuned for all the coming videos.